The main goal is actually to be the bridge between upcoming startups, new technologies, new innovation for sport, and bridge them towards these more than 60 different sports we have. So we are supporting actually the business side. So we support any startup, no matter if it's a prototype or a more mature product, towards test and validation with the athletes and coaches in any sport. So we are kind of the bridge between these two, the user and the producer.
This is the SportsTech Allstars Podcast, showcasing outstanding startups and initiatives in the global sports tech ecosystem. From SportsTech X, the leading source for data and insights about sports tech. Here is your host, Ron Malhotra.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the SportsTech Allstars Podcast. We're continuing our series speaking to heads of innovation and heads of sports technology at various sports organizations in the world. And today I've got Niels Henrik Sorensen, who is the head of the Sports Innovation Lab at the Danish Sports Confederation. Welcome to the show, Niels.
Thank you very much.
I hope I got the title right. I know I had to get through it in parts. Did I get
almost,
it spot on?
That's fine, no problem.
Oh, almost. What did I get wrong?
I'm only head of sports tech, not the innovation lab, but no problem.
Okay. No problem. All right. So head of sports tech at the Sports Confederation of Denmark. Let's get that right. All right. Perfect. Nice to meet you, Niels. I believe that you at least know a little bit about us at what we do at SportsTech X. So why don't I give you the chance to let our listeners know a little bit about you? What has been your journey to take you to this role in this, let's say, super interesting role, I like to believe, at the organization in Denmark?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Well, before joining the Sports Confederation of Denmark 5 years back, actually just when Corona started, my journey until then was actually in the IT and consulting industry. Been establishing and building companies myself, running companies across Eastern Europe and actually Asia and India, building software across industries, serving out of Denmark. So I've had a long journey in that industry, but parallel with that, I've been in field hockey. Field hockey in Denmark is on an amateur level. So you have to work together with that. So I've been a player, a coach, almost any role in field hockey in Denmark I've had. So these two in parallel sent me to the Sports Confederation of Denmark 5 years back, joining the Innovation Lab and discovering technology within sport.
Excellent to hear. So you spent a bit of time playing sport at a serious level, it sounds like, with hockey, and now you're spending your career talking about the growth of it, and also not just for one sport, by the way. We should reiterate, this is the Sports Confederation, so you're overseeing the development of all sports in Denmark. Is that correct?
That's right. DIF is an umbrella organization. So we cover 62 different sports, from football being the largest one, but many smaller sports as well, both from the grassroots and to the gold medals at the Olympics. So almost 2 million Danish people are members across these different federations.
Fantastic. Before we jump into the actual episode, can you educate me a bit? So what are your hopes of the upcoming Olympics at Paris 24? Where is Denmark going to get a medal, or get a gold medal perhaps?
I think we have several chances, but obviously badminton and handball are some of the big chances, I guess.
Badminton, yeah, of course. We remember some famous badminton Danish players up against some famous Indian badminton players, I should say. So, yeah, good battles. I hope to see more at the Olympics. All right, a little bit of context set. Let's get into actually what your role is, which is as the head of sports technology. Your, I guess, job is to primarily look at innovation within the organization. So, walk me through how you think about it. What does your day-to-day look like? What are your main goals that you're looking to achieve?
Well, our innovation lab is actually a small department within the big organization, and it's the main goal is actually to be the bridge between upcoming startups, new technologies, new innovation for sport, and bridge them towards these more than 60 different sports we have. So we are supporting actually the business side. So we support any startup, no matter if it's a prototype or a more mature product, towards test and validation with the athletes and coaches in any sport. So we are kind of the bridge between these two, the user and the producer.
And how long? Tell me a little bit about the Innovation Lab. How long has that been around? What is that structure? Do you have a set number of startups that you work with every year, or is it like an open innovation kind of format? How do you structure that?
Yeah, it was established we had a pre-run before the COVID broke out for a couple of years. And then from 2020, we organized it, and that's when I joined it. So it's actually external funded, so it's funded by the Danish Industry Fund. That's why our main focus is actually towards the companies, because we want to support them in growing their business and building businesses using Denmark as a test bed. And on the other hand, we have these more than 60 federations, athletes, coaches, managers, whatever. So we can build products in that big test bed. And we don't have this one size fits all. We actually support any Danish startup working with technology, and not only technology actually, because we do have some sustainability solutions or other solutions that's innovative for sport. So we support any company that has new innovative solutions for the world of sport. And we do that in three areas. One is the consulting part, where we have business advisory, how to build a business model in the sports world. Denmark is characterized, we are almost volunteers, all of us in the sports world. So how can you actually build a business in a market with no budgets? That's one thing. Then we test and validate a lot of products together with either the athlete or the coach or in the boardroom or wherever it fits. And the third part is actually building the SportsTech ecosystem in Denmark. Also building network, extending it across borders, supporting the more mature companies that are ready to go abroad. So that's the three main areas we work with.
Understood. And just as a follow-up to that, just to be clear, so you're working primarily with Danish companies or only with Danish companies? Or because I've also seen this format where innovation labs, which are publicly funded or have public participation, will invite other companies from outside, which, as long as they're willing to invest in that market. So maybe another startup from another region, but if they want to establish a presence in Denmark, they'd still be interesting.
Yeah, certainly. We are funded by the Danish Industry Fund, so it's not really public, but it's the industry that funds it. And on that note, it's also, of course, we then support mostly the Danish companies, or at least the companies that want to have an entity in Denmark. You're right. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, we're also part of we are inside the Sports Confederation of Denmark, so we also want to find the right solution. So it's if the right solution for bowling is not within Denmark, well, we shouldn't use that solution. We go for the right solution. So we're not limited to Danish solutions. So the demand from all the federations and athletes, we always look, internationally for the right solution, or build the right solution, because that's actually our approach. We might not find it in the market, but we want to build it together with some found a team or someone else who can see that on this demand they can actually build a new product or even a new company.
Interesting. So that's a bit of a balance between the, let's say, the primary goals of the Danish Danish startup ecosystem. So you want to develop that, but also meeting the goals that the sports organization set, which might not be just from Danish companies. So either you build or you go abroad. Okay, I think that's a fair use case. So maybe can segue into some examples of these use cases. So in the last 4 years that you've been active, what are some of the, let's say, biggest success stories that you've had, either working with companies from Denmark or building something yourselves to feed the sports organization's needs?
Yeah, a couple of examples. We build just to understand, we don't build anything ourselves. It's actually the companies and the founders who build it. We support them.
Sure.
But a couple of examples that are on the right track now is for instance, a camera for swimming where they film under the water, streaming it to a tablet for the coaches so they can see the athletes underwater almost instantly.
Is that attached to the swimmer's body, or is it just in the pool?
It's the camera is in the pool, and it streams to a tablet that the coach have above the water. But it's the big benefit is that you have it right away. Instead of having a GoPro sitting there, you need to attach it to the computer, and then a couple of hours later, you can see what you're doing. Right here, you have it 1 second later. Actually, the athlete themselves can just at the end of a lane, look up, see themselves in 4 screens, and what did they do right or wrong, and then have another lane. So that's one example. We have some VR technology for football where they can play the game again together with the coach and the player watching themselves. We have dancing apps. We have we have one almost equal to Oliver, yourself, where you have a small device on your leg measuring all the physical parts. And then we see some new solutions moving towards the more mental part of the game. And that's very interesting too.
And these are all Danish companies primarily?
These are all Danish companies, yes.
Got it. Fair. Okay, so that's a few different sports and a few different use cases that you all have already touched on. Now I want to understand a bit more about the process of how you all handle, because as we said at the start, you're dealing with 60 different sports or 60 plus sports. Each has very different needs. Something like football, which is very big, and let's say the requirements or the innovation requirements are very different from, say, a sport like swimming or badminton or anything else. How does it come to you? Do you have a priority? Do you speak to each sports federation separately or a sports group separately and then try to understand, or do you try to go with, hey, this is maybe something like a topic of fans, for example, which can go across all sports? How do you prioritize the innovation needs of the various sports organizations that you work with?
Yeah, actually we do both, because they do have individual needs, and they are always welcome to knock our door and tell us about it, and we will look into the market to see how can we find solutions for that. On the other hand, of course, we have many companies knocking our door saying we want to test this product with this specific sport or with this or across sports, if it's for fans, for instance, or for a sustainable cup for any event or
maybe broadcasting or something like that.
So, for instance, yes. So we do have also on the commercial side, you have platforms that goes across sports, measuring sponsorship value, etc. So for that, we usually group the federations so they can learn from each other and also adapt it. And then we have a sister organization called Team Denmark, which is actually the one handling the top athletes aiming for the gold at the Olympics. Mm-hmm. So they decide, what they use for these top athletes. So we are a lot of the times testing and trying new products with, academies or talent pods or sub elite. It can also be from a sport that's not professional but still at a top level. So that's usually the group where we test the products within.
Interesting. So you're straight away working or giving access to elite athletes where their, let's say, the gains are very small and they're looking for the finer details. Right? It's small margins.
Sometimes it's difficult to have access to the A athletes because you have this Olympic cycle and the last 2 years until the games. It's difficult to get access there. But at the level just underneath that, many talents would like to try new technology. To see if they can improve.
Yeah, makes sense. About the innovation format, like when you're rolling out, what are the biggest challenges that you face when you're, let's say, for example, within your own team, of how you execute projects, and then taking a step back with certain, do you see a common theme with certain challenges that individual sports federations that you deal with face? So first, from your overall confederation's perspective, and then maybe from the view that you hear that the other sports teams the sports federations are telling you.
Yeah, we see several challenges, but I think the main one being in the sports industry is probably it's still quite conservative. So looking into new technology might be still a challenge. The other one is actually, innovation is also about failing and allowing failing. And that's a cultural mindset that you must change. So actually you try a new solution, whether it's for analytics or it's for measuring your physical part or whatever, but it might not work. And you actually spend time together with a company testing a product, and you do that for 3 months, and it ends up, never going to work. That you must be prepared for. And I see across many, both clubs and federations, resources are limited, so taking that risk is still a challenge. We do see clubs now actually having allocated resources for such tests, but it's still a small amount of clubs and federations that have that. Hopefully that will grow, because then we can test and innovate even more.
So it sounds like the first thing, well, you talked about access to athletes in the previous answer, so maybe you can count that a bit as well. But you spoke first, I think it's almost like you're talking about culture. So there's a mindset thing of, they're a bit conservative, so to be a bit more adventurous. But when you're being adventurous, to accept that failure is part of the journey, and not, let's say, overreact to it and change things too much.
Absolutely. I don't think that's not only within the sports industry.
Sure.
But I've seen it the last 4 years in the sports industry as well. And I think, there's also a difference between a professional club and a amateur level, where everybody are volunteers. So, what's happening tomorrow or the game on Saturday might be, you have to fix that before looking 6, 12, 18 months ahead for putting effort into supporting a company, building a new product for your, the longer run.
Yeah, what gives me cause for optimism is the fact that you exist in that role, that there is somebody with this responsibility. So it already shows that there is some forward thinking, that there is a budget allocated, or there is some resources allocated to this forward thinking approach. So that already, let's say, sets the tone.
And with us being in this role, we also, find the individuals across the different sports that really are eager to test new stuff. So we do have managers and coaches and board members around the sport that says, bring it on. We want to test everything. So these, front runners also, they are really valuable for the companies, because if they test it fast, then time to market it's much faster for the companies, and that's valuable.
Yeah, and that's also valuable. For one of the things that I hear a lot is that sports, because of the conservative nature or because of the, let's say, the stakes involved, that sports would rather be, it's the race to being second, or I'd rather be the first follower rather than the first one to go through the door and break your head on it or whatever. But you need a bit of that. You need somebody to take the lead. And it sounds like there are maybe a few people within the organization that are
Certainly,
willing to do that.
there are many people across the different federations. Absolutely.
Super. You talked about it a couple of minutes before, that you want to solve the problems for tomorrow, but also aligned with the opportunities of 6 to 12 months or 18 months. What do those look like from your perspective? What are the things that are happening in the technology space around sports that excites you the most?
Oh, a lot going on, I guess.
We have time, Niels. We have time.
Very good. No, for many years we have built technology for the, you also see it from the investment side. For the performance side, we can measure everything almost. We have tons of data for the athletes. What's interesting now is to see, and you have already started seeing it, that all these data is now shared with the fans. Almost instantly, but at least during the game or during the match, or depending on the kind of sport. So that is interesting. How far are we willing to go there? Are we willing to share the VAT the cycling team is producing with the fans instantly, or is it still a secret for your competitors? So all these data shared with the fans, I think, is one really interesting area to look at. One is also, I mentioned the mental part. Different software and also actually hardware, but solutions where you can strengthen your mental side is popping up. It's a bit more difficult as what we see compared to the physical part, but it's a big focus, and it's where the athletes are now able to improve and find these small extra percentages.
Fair. So we talked a little bit about fan data, or let's say it's not fan data actually, it's access for fans to advanced metrics and advanced analytics. We've seen this in various sports. I think I can give you many examples. The NBA took on a very conscious initiative, I think about 5 or 7 years ago, that they would introduce advanced metrics to fans, because it kind of smartens the fans and advances the conversation. In football, everybody talks about XG now. It's no longer about the actual goal. It's about what the XG was. And it's almost like there's a separate table that you see from broadcasters. This is the XG table, and this is the real table. And Formula One does a really good job, I think, with producing or showing the data that they collect from EWS. So it's a good balance that you need to achieve between what is proprietary and teams want to keep for themselves, which I think they will always do. It's not nothing that will harm their chances of winning, shall we say, will probably go out in the public domain.
Of course not. What's already seen in the NBA is, where you actually have the commentator explaining the analytics live to the fans, and that's interesting. Having that part of the broadcasting as well, so you actually understand all the data. Not only having the data, but understand how it's used and why they are doing what they are doing along the game. That's an interesting development.
That's a great point. I want to give a quick story, not a story, but a little note about how broadcasting can play a role. We all have talked about Kabaddi in India, if you're familiar with it, or the growth of Kabaddi as a sport, which after the IPL, where the biggest cricket league in the world, everybody knows that. The KPL, the Kabaddi Premier League, was the second biggest league above football, above a lot of the other sports that we play in India. And a big reason for that, and kabaddi was a sport that was played by our great grandparents. Nobody played it in school. It wasn't a popular. It's a very traditional Indian sport, but it came back to life because the broadcaster invested in it. And throughout the entire broadcast, they were constantly explaining what was happening. They explaining the rules, so not just commentating on the action, but actually educating the listener on all these stats that were taking place. So this person has done that, and or what the rules of the game are, etc. So the broadcaster, to your point, plays a huge role in how the fan receives the game. And these advanced analytics that we're talking about are also helping progress that conversation. You touched on athlete a bit. You talked about the mental side and how, let's say, developments in that area excite you. How do you view, because you're dealing with a lot of athletes across 60 sports, there's a big conversation around athlete welfare, athlete data protection. How do you as a federation look at, from the purview of GDPR, from the purview of welfare of the athlete, but also making sure that the needs and requirements of the federations are at hand? How do you manage that, and what kind of solutions are you looking for, or do you think there are opportunities there for startups to help out athletes and federations?
Yeah, that's it's a difficult area, and to be honest, I'm not that familiar with different solutions in that space. But the aim here is to have the data across the club, the federation, the athlete themselves, all their personal different coaches for mental, for sleep, etc. So how do you share information and data across these, and who is actually responsible? Building a solution that can handle that might be an option. But I'm not an expert within that area, so I guess I don't want to, put too many words on that because that's I don't know much about it. But the GDPR, of course, is a challenge, but as long as you keep it for yourself and within, your team or your club, I haven't seen big challenges in that. Of course, as in any industry, if there's a leak, well, you have a problem.
Yeah, access to data is a big one straight away, and making sure that everybody has access to the data that they need. All right, we covered a little bit about fans, we covered a little bit about athletes. So I think we've got a sense of what excites you. There are many things that we can talk about, from AI, the use of AI in different ways, or mixed reality and VR and stuff, and there are various applications. But I found it interesting that you talked about the two areas that you did: mental, cognitive development for athletes, and also data access to fans. Let's take a step back and talk about what's coming up for you as an organization. What does the next 12 to 18 months look like for the Danish Sports Confederation? Are there any plans, any initiatives coming up that you'd like to talk about? I mean, apart from a successful Olympics, I assume.
Of course. Yes, actually, our next step, or what we're aiming for now, is to have. We are organized in a unique way in Denmark, because we have, not all of these 60 federations, but most of them sitting in one house next to Copenhagen. Mm-hmm. So we are actually all gathered in the House of Sport. And our next aim is actually to have a physical area within House of Sport where we can, illustrate and demonstrate all these different technologies for the different federations. And that's like not only
a little innovation showcase.
Yeah, it's a big demo room, just not only with screens, but also in the, trying it, using it. And there are several purposes for that, because it's not only a big sales room for the companies, it should go the other way around as well. So educating coaches, athletes, anyone within the organization in using these technologies, should be faster implementing the technologies. So that's one big aim, actually, to have this area also to co-develop. So you might have a sports manager or sporting director or a national team coach, or sitting together with the company for a couple of weeks to co-develop new technologies or building prototypes, etc. So that's the aim, and we hope to have the conclusion this year, so we can start building it already from next year, hopefully.
There we go. That's my perfect excuse to come to visit you in Copenhagen, because this sounds super interesting. Either if you need any resources, any suggestions, startups, or just somebody to hold up the board to point people where to go, I'm happy to participate, because these are the kind of things.
You're more than welcome. And actually, we're looking around, to see and to find peers who are doing this, and we haven't really found. We have found fragments of it. But no one really building such a sports technology center yet. You have some in Singapore and Madrid and others from Microsoft. But we So if you hear of any that are doing the same, we would love to talk to them as well.
For sure, we can take this conversation offline. Of course, the one that you mentioned, GSIC, with their 2 bases in Madrid and Singapore, we know quite well, have been to their office in Calle Goya a couple of times. Maybe you have as well. But this is an area that we're seeing more investment in. There have been a few facilities announced recently. I don't believe they're open yet, but it's a nice trend. We were at some point thinking about doing something in Berlin of this sort. Maybe we can bring that project back to life as well. Niels, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for taking the time. Before I let you go, I have one last question, which is always my favorite question to ask. We're all working in sports because I believe we're fans of it. I'd like to know, what has been your favorite sporting moment that maybe you've participated in as an athlete as well, because you've had a career, or as a fan, whatever you prefer.
Well, that's difficult. That's been quite being 45, but maybe I can pick a few then.
Yeah,
not only one. As an athlete, coming from a small sport, which hockey is in Denmark, we played the indoor Champions League final against the German champions back in the 90s. That was quite an achievement as an athlete from a small sport. From a fan perspective, one of my first, I was only, the World Cup in 86, where Denmark beat Uruguay in the middle of the night, is one of the first games I remember. But to be honest, being a parent now, one of the biggest moments now is seeing the kids enjoying team sport, aiming for medals, but also, just having their best friends in sport. So yeah, that's probably 3 answers in one.
Fair. You're allowed as many as you want. Niels, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and telling us more about the innovation activities or the sports tech related activities at the Danish Sports Confederation. If anybody wants to reach out to you, what is the best place to do that? On LinkedIn or via your email?
LinkedIn or my email. That's perfect.
Okay, super. We'll put both of those in the show notes below. All right, pleasure to talk, and maybe we'll chat a little bit more about this new innovation hub or showcase center that you're looking to build. I'm happy to talk about that.
That could be the next episode. Yeah,
maybe that'll be the next episode. Fantastic. All right, cheers, Hans. Thank you for joining us. All right, that is a wrap for another episode. I believe we have one, maybe 2 more in this series. We're hearing from, as I mentioned, innovation leaders and people who are really driving this momentum that is coming in the sports innovation space. We're seeing this all across the world. We're focusing now on Europe a bit, but there is so much happening in all over the world. And in fact, you can see a bit of what's happening in one of our upcoming reports. We will publish our next ecosystem report, but there is a bit of time for that. That'll be out, I believe, at the end of April. So stay tuned for that one. In the meantime, subscribe to our newsletter if you haven't yet. And otherwise, I'll see you guys next week. Ciao.
Thanks for listening to the SportsTech Allstars Podcast with Rowan Malhotra. If you like our show, let us know and leave a review. And if you want to know more about us, check out SportsTechX.com, where you can find our latest industry reports and updates. For a deeper dive into all things sports tech, check out our comprehensive database, SportsTechDB, at SportsTechDB.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media. You can find us at SportsTechX on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Join us next time for another insightful conversation with a leader in sports tech.